Welcome to Sleepy Dungeons. Tonight, we unveil the mysteries of the Great Pyramid of Giza, an ancient engineering marvel that has baffled historians, architects, and dreamers for millennia. Step into 3000 BC, where the secrets of this colossal structure and the civilization that built it still echo through time. The Great Pyramid, with its towering height and precise construction, holds a wealth of unanswered questions, and it is this mystery that has captured the world's imagination for centuries. The ancient Egyptians, who lived along the banks of the Nile River, were masters of their time. Their innovations in architecture, mathematics, and astronomy still leave us in awe. But it was the Great Pyramid of Giza, built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, that became the pinnacle of their achievements. Standing over 480 feet tall and constructed with more than 2 million stone blocks, the pyramid defied the very understanding of engineering and construction that we hold today. How did they accomplish such a feat with primitive tools and methods? Why does the Great Pyramid continue to stand as the last surviving wonder of the ancient world? The significance of this structure lies not just in its size, but in the mystery of its construction. What we know of its builders, the vast labor force that worked tirelessly to assemble its massive stones, and the tools they used, all come together to form a puzzle that we have yet to fully solve. It is the stories of the pharaohs, the myths of gods and mortals, and the symbols hidden within the pyramid's design that continue to intrigue us. As we explore these themes tonight, we will journey through time to unlock secrets that have remained buried for thousands of years. As you listen, let the story guide you into calmness. May the rhythm of history soothe your thoughts, bringing you peace, rest, and the promise of good dreams. The sounds of the past, the whispers of those who built the Great Pyramid, will slowly fade into the distance, and you will find yourself drifting into a peaceful slumber. In tonight's journey, we'll explore the origins of the ancient Egyptian civilization, trace the rise of the pharaohs, delve into the creation of the Great Pyramid, and unravel the mysteries that continue to baffle modern scholars. We will uncover the profound impact of this structure on ancient society and reflect on its legacy that still influences the world today. You've already followed this far, why not subscribe now? That way, you'll never miss another haunting journey into the forgotten corners of history. The land that would eventually become the heart of ancient Egypt was a place of vast contrast, where the arid deserts and the lush banks of the Nile River met. Stretching across the northeastern corner of Africa, Egypt's geography played a key role in its rise to greatness. The Nile, flowing from the mountains of East Africa to the Mediterranean Sea, brought life to this otherwise desolate region. Each year, the river would overflow its banks, depositing a layer of fertile silt upon the surrounding lands, transforming the area into a garden of abundance. This seasonal flooding not only made agriculture possible but provided a natural highway for trade and communication, linking communities and cultures across the vast desert. Beyond the river's influence, Egypt's natural resources were plentiful. The land was rich in stone, gold, and precious metals, all of which played a crucial role in the civilization's growth. The Egyptians were skilled miners, and the quarries in the hills surrounding the Nile provided them with limestone, granite, and sandstone, the building materials that would help create the monumental structures we marvel at today. The stones of the Great Pyramid were cut from quarries just outside the city of Giza, and their transport to the construction site is still a subject of much debate and fascination. Before the glory of the pharaohs and the building of the Great Pyramid, the land was inhabited by early settlers who found a way to thrive in this seemingly inhospitable region. These early communities took advantage of the Nile's floodplain, developing agricultural techniques that would allow them to grow wheat, barley, and flax. They learned to domesticate animals, such as cattle and sheep, and began forming villages that eventually grew into cities. This fertile land, combined with the people's ability to harness its resources, set the stage for the rise of one of the most powerful civilizations in human history. It was not just the river and the land that gave Egypt its power, but the people's ingenuity and their ability to build a society based on unity and organization. Egypt's early leaders, who were likely tribal chiefs or local kings, understood the importance of centralization. Over time, the small villages and settlements along the Nile were unified under a single ruler. This centralization allowed for the development of a structured society, with a clear division of labor and the organization of large-scale projects. The first pyramid builders were not just laborers, they were part of a well-oiled machine, contributing to a vision that would change the landscape of Egypt forever. As Egypt's leaders solidified their power, they began to build more than just simple homes and villages. Temples were constructed to honor the gods, and monumental structures began to dot the landscape. The first step pyramid, a precursor to the Grand Giza Pyramid, was built by Pharaoh Djoser in the 27th century BC. This early experiment in stone construction would lay the foundation for what was to come. As the centuries passed, Egypt continued to grow, and the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under the rule of one king, known as the Pharaoh, set the stage for the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Great Pyramid did not rise from the sand overnight. It was the result of centuries of preparation, of rulers who understood the importance of monumental architecture in solidifying their divine power and eternal legacy. As the pharaohs built their kingdom, they also built a future, one that would be etched in stone for eternity. The land, the river, and the resources all aligned perfectly, creating the ideal conditions for a civilization that would leave an indelible mark on history. And so, as Egypt flourished, it became clear that the Great Pyramid of Giza was not merely a tomb but a symbol of the greatness that Egypt had achieved, and the greatness that it aspired to forever. The origins of Egypt are shrouded in myth and legend, with stories of gods, heroes, and divine intervention weaving together to form the foundation of Egyptian identity. According to one of the most ancient accounts, the first pharaoh was Narmer, who unified Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BC, but the Egyptians themselves believed their history went much further back, into the realms of the divine. They told stories of gods who walked among them, shaping the land, guiding their rulers, and instilling in them a sense of purpose that transcended mortal understanding. One of the most enduring myths was that of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, whose death and resurrection were said to symbolize the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth, a cycle reflected in the construction of the Great Pyramids, which were believed to house the pharaohs for eternity. These divine myths were not just stories but the very fabric of Egyptian culture. They gave meaning to the lives of the people, reinforcing the belief that the pharaohs were gods in human form, chosen to maintain order on earth and bridge the gap between the divine and the mortal. The pharaoh was seen as the living Horus, the god of kingship, and upon his death, he would become Osiris, the god of the afterlife. This divine mandate gave the pharaoh the power to command vast resources and labor, and it was this power that enabled the construction of monumental structures like the Great Pyramid. Archaeological evidence, however, presents a more grounded account of Egypt's beginnings. The first evidence of Egyptian civilization dates back to around 1500 BC, with the emergence of farming communities along the Nile. Over time, these communities began to develop into more complex societies, eventually leading to the formation of small kingdoms that would later unite under the rule of a single pharaoh. The unification of Egypt under Narmer, as depicted in the famous Narmer palette, marked the beginning of the First Dynasty and the establishment of the pharaoh's divine right to rule. This unification was not just political but also symbolic, as it marked the consolidation of both Upper and Lower Egypt under a single crown, setting the stage for the golden age of Egyptian civilization. The early rulers of Egypt were more than just kings, they were the earthly representatives of the gods. Their divine ancestry was central to their legitimacy. The belief that the pharaohs were chosen by the gods gave them the authority to rule, but it also placed them under the protection of the divine, ensuring their right to build monuments that would outlast them. The pyramid, as the ultimate symbol of the pharaoh's power and divine connection, was conceived not just as a tomb but as a gateway to the afterlife, where the pharaoh would continue his reign in the presence of the gods. The early Egyptians were also keen observers of the natural world, and their understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and architecture was advanced for their time. Evidence of this can be seen in the alignment of the pyramids with celestial bodies, such as the stars of Orion's belt, which were associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife. This celestial connection was more than symbolic. It was believed that the pharaoh's journey into the afterlife was a literal ascent into the stars, where he would join the gods. The Great Pyramid itself, built by Pharaoh Khufu, was aligned with incredible precision to the cardinal points of the compass, further demonstrating the Egyptians' mastery of both earthly and cosmic forces. The myths and legends of Egypt provided a sense of continuity, linking the living pharaohs with their ancestors and the gods. The belief in divine kingship not only reinforced the pharaoh's authority but also created a sense of unity among the people, binding them to a shared history and a common destiny. It was this combination of myth, divine legitimacy, and practical knowledge that allowed Egypt to flourish and build the monumental structures that still stand as a testament to their greatness. The Great Pyramid, which would come to embody this powerful legacy, was the culmination of centuries of myth, belief, and human ingenuity, a marvel that reflected both the divine aspirations of the pharaohs and the practical skills of the people who built it. As Egypt grew and flourished, so too did its need for practical innovation to sustain its growing population and ambitious projects. The Nile provided fertile soil for agriculture, but it was the ingenuity of the Egyptians that turned this bounty into the lifeblood of their civilization. The annual flooding of the Nile, while bringing life to the land, also required careful planning and management. The Egyptians developed an advanced system of irrigation, building canals and basins to control the flow of water and direct it to the fields. This innovation allowed them to farm efficiently and consistently, ensuring a steady supply of grain, which became the cornerstone of Egypt's wealth. The surplus of food supported a growing population and provided the necessary resources for the monumental construction projects that defined the civilization. In addition to agriculture, the Egyptians made significant advances in trade. The Nile, which ran through the heart of Egypt, served as a natural highway for transporting goods. As trade routes expanded, Egypt became a hub for commerce, exchanging goods such as grain, papyrus, linen, and gold for materials like cedar wood, copper, and lapis lazuli. These trade connections helped fuel Egypt's economy and foster cultural exchange with other civilizations, from Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley. The wealth generated from trade also allowed Egypt to maintain a powerful military, ensuring the safety of its borders and the prosperity of its people. Alongside agriculture and trade, Egypt's technological and architectural advancements were truly remarkable. The Egyptians were skilled engineers, and their mastery of stonework and construction laid the foundation for the building of the pyramids. Early tombs were simple affairs, but as the understanding of architecture grew, so too did the ambition of Egyptian rulers. The Step Pyramid, built by Pharaoh Djoser in the 27th century BC, marked a monumental leap in Egyptian architectural innovation. It was the first major stone structure of its kind, and its success paved the way for the grand pyramids that would follow. Djoser's Step Pyramid, made of 6 layers of stone, served as both a tomb and a symbol of the pharaoh's divine power, a theme that would resonate throughout Egypt's history. As the years passed, Egyptian society continued to evolve. Crafts and trade flourished, and the Egyptians became skilled in producing intricate jewelry, pottery, and textiles. Social organization became more complex, and the division of labor grew more specialized. Artisans, scribes, and builders became vital to the success of Egypt, each contributing their skills to the greater good. Daily life for the elite was filled with luxury, as wealth and power were concentrated in the hands of the pharaoh and the priesthood. But for the majority of Egyptians, life was more modest, and they worked the land or served as laborers in the service of the state. Despite the disparities in wealth, a shared sense of purpose and connection to the divine through the pharaohs helped maintain stability. In this early phase of Egyptian civilization, the foundations for the construction of the Great Pyramid were being laid, not just in terms of physical labor, but in terms of social and political organization. The centralized government, which had been established under the first pharaohs, had evolved into a powerful bureaucracy, one that could mobilize resources and labor on an unprecedented scale. The pyramid would require not only skilled labor but also a vast network of workers to quarry the stone, transport it, and assemble it. The organization of this labor force, along with the supply of food and materials, was a remarkable feat of coordination, one that was possible only because of the efficiency and sophistication of the Egyptian state. The Egyptians also made advancements in mathematics and astronomy that played a crucial role in the construction of the pyramid. The alignment of the pyramid with the cardinal points, its precise measurements, and its near-perfect proportions suggest a deep understanding of geometry and the movement of celestial bodies. The Egyptians used the stars, particularly those of Orion's belt, to align the pyramids and ensure their accuracy. The belief that the pharaoh's soul would ascend to the stars and join the gods in the afterlife was central to their understanding of the pyramid's purpose, and it was this belief that drove the Egyptians to achieve such perfection in their engineering. Life in Egypt during this time was a delicate balance of practical ingenuity and divine belief. The achievements of the civilization were not merely a product of human labor but were seen as part of a divine plan, with the pharaoh as the intermediary between the gods and the people. As the Great Pyramid began to take shape, it stood as both a symbol of earthly power and a gateway to the divine. The innovation required to build such a monument was awe-inspiring, but it was also the result of centuries of development in agriculture, trade, and technology. The Great Pyramid, though still a distant vision at this point, would soon rise as a testament to Egypt's ability to harness both human and divine forces to create something eternal. The construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza is often seen as the crowning achievement of the Egyptian civilization, and it was Pharaoh Khufu who ordered its creation. His reign marked a period of remarkable wealth and power for Egypt, and the building of the pyramid was not just a personal endeavor, it was a statement of the pharaoh's divine right to rule and his place among the gods. Khufu's ambition went beyond that of his predecessors. He sought to create a monument that would transcend time, one that would preserve his memory for eternity and serve as a gateway to the afterlife. To do so, he called upon the best minds and the greatest labor force in Egypt. The construction of the pyramid itself would require an immense workforce. Though the exact number is still debated, it is believed that tens of thousands of workers were employed on the project, including skilled laborers, artisans, and unskilled workers who were drafted to assist in the massive undertaking. These workers were not slaves, as often depicted in popular culture, but rather a well-organized labor force, with some even being permanent employees of the state. They were fed, housed, and provided for, as their work was seen as a form of religious devotion, a way to honor the pharaoh and ensure his safe passage to the afterlife. The laborers worked in shifts, and the work was divided into specialized tasks, from quarrying the stone to transporting it and finally placing it into position. Each stone block, which weighed several tons, was carefully carved and shaped to fit precisely with the others. The stones themselves were hauled from quarries far from Giza, some even coming from the southern region of Aswan, where granite was mined. This granite was used for the internal chambers of the pyramid, while the outer casing was made from limestone, much of which was quarried from the nearby hills. The transportation of these massive stones across the desert, without the use of modern machinery, remains one of the greatest mysteries of the pyramid's construction. Once the stones arrived at the construction site, they had to be lifted in place with remarkable precision. Various theories exist about how this was accomplished. Some believe that ramps were used to transport the stones up the sides of the pyramid, while others suggest that a combination of levers, rollers, and manpower was employed. Regardless of the methods used, the precision with which the pyramid was constructed is astonishing. The Great Pyramid is aligned with incredible accuracy to the cardinal points of the compass, and its dimensions are so precise that even modern engineers are in awe of the craftsmanship involved. In addition to the physical challenges of construction, the project also required a complex system of organization and management. The workers were overseen by supervisors and engineers who ensured that the project stayed on schedule and within the pharaoh's vision. This required meticulous planning, not only in terms of the construction itself but also in managing the logistics of feeding, housing, and transporting such a large workforce. The organization of this massive endeavor demonstrates the sophistication of ancient Egyptian bureaucracy and the centralization of power under the pharaoh. The laborers who worked on the pyramid were part of a highly structured society where every task, no matter how small, had a specific purpose in the grand scheme of things. While the pyramid was being constructed, Egypt's wealth and power continued to grow. Khufu's reign saw the expansion of Egypt's borders, the strengthening of its economy through trade, and the building of grand structures that showcased the pharaoh's might. But it was the pyramid that would ultimately define Khufu's legacy. Though his reign lasted for only a few decades, the pyramid ensured that his name would live on forever. In a sense, the pyramid became Khufu's own immortality, a lasting monument to his divine rule and the grand vision that drove the construction of such an extraordinary structure. As the pyramid began to rise from the desert floor, it was a testament to the power of the pharaoh and the ability of the Egyptian people to accomplish what seemed impossible. It was not merely a tomb but a symbol of Egypt's greatness, its enduring power, and its connection to the divine. For Khufu, the pyramid would be his final resting place, but it would also serve as a monument to his reign and to the civilization he helped build. In the years that followed, other pharaohs would try to outdo him, constructing even larger and more elaborate pyramids, but none would ever surpass the grandeur and precision of the Great Pyramid of Giza. As the Great Pyramid of Giza began to rise, so too did Egypt's influence over the surrounding lands. The pyramid was not just a symbol of the pharaoh's power within Egypt but also a reflection of Egypt's growing authority over its neighbors. The pharaohs were not merely rulers of Egypt, they were seen as divine figures whose reach extended far beyond their borders. The construction of the pyramid itself was an act of monumental prestige, a clear indication that Egypt's rulers were not only capable of commanding vast resources but also of shaping the world around them. At the time, Egypt was a central hub for trade, culture, and diplomacy. The Nile River acted as a natural highway, allowing Egypt to exchange goods with neighboring regions. Egypt's merchants traded gold, linen, and grain for materials like wood, lapis lazuli, and copper, which were not found in the Nile Valley. This trade network connected Egypt to distant lands, from Mesopotamia to the Levant, and even to the more distant lands of Nubia and Punt. Egypt's wealth, both in terms of natural resources and trade, allowed it to expand its influence and form diplomatic ties with other powerful nations of the time. While the Great Pyramid was being built, Egypt was experiencing an era of relative peace. The pharaohs of the Old Kingdom were able to focus on monumental projects, such as the pyramid, because Egypt was not facing major external threats. The surrounding regions were either neutral or relatively peaceful, and Egypt's military might was unrivaled. This allowed for the concentration of resources on internal development, such as the construction of massive structures, the growth of the arts, and the flourishing of Egyptian culture. As Egypt's influence spread, the pharaohs of the Old Kingdom sought to solidify their power through strategic alliances. Marriage alliances with powerful neighboring kingdoms, along with trade agreements, helped strengthen Egypt's position as the dominant force in the region. The construction of monumental structures, like the Great Pyramid, also served as a diplomatic tool, signaling to both allies and enemies alike that Egypt was not just a political power but a divine force to be reckoned with. The pyramid itself became a symbol of Egypt's dominance. It was not just a tomb for a single ruler, it was a message to the rest of the world that Egypt's pharaohs were eternal and their power unchallenged. The Great Pyramid's sheer size and complexity made it an unparalleled achievement in the ancient world. It represented not just the physical power of Egypt, but its spiritual and cultural dominance. The pyramid was a microcosm of Egypt itself, stable, powerful, and unyielding, much like the pharaohs who ruled over it. But the pyramid was also a reflection of Egypt's ambitions. As Khufu's vision took shape, so did Egypt's broader aspirations for control and influence. The pyramid's grandeur was a testament to Egypt's ability to marshal resources, to harness labor, and to turn the very forces of nature to its will. It was not just a tomb, it was an emblem of the pharaoh's eternal reign and a promise that Egypt would endure for millennia to come. Egypt's diplomatic and cultural influence was not limited to its immediate neighbors. The grandeur of the pyramid and other monumental structures inspired awe throughout the ancient world, and Egypt's culture, art, and religion began to spread far beyond its borders. As Egypt's wealth and influence grew, so too did the allure of its civilization. The wonders of Egypt, particularly the pyramids, would become an enduring symbol of ancient greatness, and their influence would continue to be felt long after the fall of the Old Kingdom. As the pyramid continued to rise, it became more than just a project for Khufu, it was a national endeavor. The entire nation was invested in its construction, from the laborers who worked tirelessly to the architects and engineers who oversaw its design and execution. The pyramid became a unifying force, a symbol that transcended individual rulers and generations. It was a physical manifestation of Egypt's power, a timeless reminder of the civilization's might and its connection to the divine. As the Great Pyramid of Giza took shape, so too did the legacy of ancient Egypt. The sheer scale of the pyramid was a marvel, and it embodied not just the ambition of the pharaoh Khufu, but also the greatness of Egyptian civilization. As the largest and most impressive of the pyramids, the Great Pyramid stood as a testament to the Egyptians' unmatched skill in architecture and engineering. It was an achievement that defied the understanding of later generations, and its grandeur would serve as a model for future pharaohs. The construction of such an enormous monument required not only technological and architectural innovation but also a deep understanding of mathematics and astronomy. The pyramid's alignment with the stars and cardinal directions was no accident, it was a product of meticulous planning and observation. The Egyptians had an advanced knowledge of geometry, and they used this to achieve the pyramid's nearly perfect proportions. Its base covers an area of over 13 acres, and each side is aligned with incredible precision to the 4 cardinal points. This level of accuracy, achieved without the use of modern tools, continues to baffle engineers and archaeologists to this day. The pyramid's design was also symbolic. The pointed shape of the pyramid was intended to represent the rays of the sun, a connection that linked the pharaoh to the sun god Ra, the most important deity in the Egyptian pantheon. The pharaoh was not just a ruler on earth, he was considered a living god, and the pyramid was his path to the afterlife, a way for him to ascend to the heavens and join the gods. The massive structure was more than just a tomb, it was a cosmic symbol, connecting the pharaoh's soul to the divine realm. This spiritual significance made the pyramid not only an architectural feat but a religious one as well, reinforcing the divine nature of the pharaoh's rule. The building of the pyramid was also a testament to Egypt's ability to mobilize vast resources and labor. Thousands of workers, from skilled craftsmen to unskilled laborers, were employed in the project, and their efforts were coordinated with remarkable precision. These workers were housed in nearby workers' villages and provided with food, shelter, and medical care, as the construction of the pyramid was seen as a sacred duty. The workforce was divided into teams, each responsible for different aspects of the construction, from quarrying the stone to transporting it and placing it in position. It was a monumental task, one that required both physical strength and intellectual skill. In addition to the workers, the pyramid's construction required a highly organized system of logistics and planning. The stones, many of which weighed several tons, had to be transported from quarries located miles away. Some of the heavier stones were brought from Aswan, located to the south, while the limestone used for the outer casing was quarried much closer to Giza. The transportation of these massive stones, particularly without the aid of modern machinery, remains one of the most enduring mysteries of ancient Egypt. Some theories suggest the use of sledges, rollers, and ramps, while others propose more sophisticated methods involving levers and counterweights. Regardless of the method, the movement of these stones required a level of organization and engineering skill that was unprecedented at the time. The Great Pyramid's interior was just as remarkable as its exterior. Inside the pyramid, a series of chambers and passageways were carved into the solid rock, designed to house the pharaoh's tomb and the treasures that would accompany him in the afterlife. The burial chamber, located at the heart of the pyramid, was constructed using massive granite blocks, some weighing several tons. These blocks were carefully cut and placed with such precision that no mortar was needed to hold them together. The Egyptians' mastery of stoneworking allowed them to create structures that would stand the test of time, and the Great Pyramid remains the largest and most enduring of all the ancient Egyptian pyramids. The pyramid was also equipped with elaborate systems of passageways and air shafts, which were believed to serve both practical and symbolic purposes. These shafts were aligned with specific stars, further emphasizing the cosmic nature of the pyramid and its connection to the divine. The pyramid was not just a tomb, but a celestial machine designed to guide the pharaoh's soul to the afterlife. The meticulous design and construction of the pyramid were intended to ensure the pharaoh's immortality and to preserve his memory for future generations. As the pyramid neared completion, it became a symbol of Egypt's enduring power and its connection to the gods. The construction of such a monumental structure required an enormous investment of resources, and it signified the height of Egyptian civilization. The Great Pyramid was more than just a burial place. It was a statement of divine authority, a representation of the pharaoh's power, and a beacon of Egypt's greatness that would stand the test of time. As the Great Pyramid stood tall on the Giza Plateau, its presence was not just a reflection of the pharaoh's divine power, but also an embodiment of the Egyptian way of life. The pyramid was an expression of Egyptian society's deep connection to the divine and the importance of maintaining order and stability. In ancient Egypt, society was structured in a highly organized and hierarchical manner, with the pharaoh at the top as both a political and spiritual leader. Beneath him were priests, scribes, soldiers, artisans, and farmers, each contributing to the functioning of the kingdom. At the very top of society was the pharaoh, who was not just a ruler but considered a living god. He was believed to be the intermediary between the gods and the people, responsible for maintaining Ma'at, the divine order of the universe. The pharaoh's role was sacred, and his every action was seen as divinely ordained. This divine kingship gave the pharaoh the authority to command vast resources and direct the construction of monumental projects like the Great Pyramid. It also ensured that he would be remembered for eternity, as the pyramid would serve as his tomb and his pathway to the afterlife. Beneath the pharaoh were the priests, who played a crucial role in maintaining Egypt's religious and spiritual life. The priesthood held great power and influence, as they were responsible for performing rituals, offering sacrifices, and ensuring that the gods were properly honored. The priests also acted as intermediaries between the people and the divine, interpreting the will of the gods and offering guidance on matters of both religious and secular importance. Many of the greatest temples in Egypt, including those at Karnak and Luxor, were built by the pharaohs to honor the gods, and these structures became the centers of religious life in ancient Egypt. The scribes, who formed a vital part of Egyptian society, were the record keepers and administrators of the state. They were the ones who wrote down the laws, kept track of taxes, and documented the pharaoh's decrees. Without scribes, the bureaucracy of ancient Egypt would not have functioned, as they were responsible for maintaining the written records that ensured the smooth running of the state. The scribes were highly respected and were trained in the art of writing hieroglyphs, a complex system of symbols that was used for religious, administrative, and monumental purposes. Artisans and laborers were the backbone of Egyptian society, and their work was essential to the creation of the monumental structures that defined the civilization. The Great Pyramid itself was built by thousands of workers who were employed in quarrying the stone, transporting it to the site, and putting it in place. These laborers were highly skilled and were organized into teams that worked under the supervision of architects and engineers. While the laborers worked on the pyramid, the artisans created the intricate artworks, jewelry, and pottery that adorned the pharaohs' tombs and temples. The art of ancient Egypt was highly symbolic, with each piece carefully crafted to serve both aesthetic and religious purposes. The majority of Egyptians, however, were farmers who worked the land. The fertile soil of the Nile allowed for the cultivation of wheat, barley, and flax, which provided the foundation for Egypt's economy. The annual flooding of the Nile was essential to this agricultural system, as it replenished the soil with the nutrients needed for crops to thrive. Farmers worked long hours in the fields, tending to their crops and ensuring that the kingdom was well fed. While they may have lived more modestly than the elite, their work was essential to the functioning of the entire society. Family life in ancient Egypt was centered around the home, where men, women, and children lived together in extended families. The family unit was considered the cornerstone of society, and the roles within the family were clearly defined. Men were typically the breadwinners, working as farmers, craftsmen, or scribes, while women were responsible for managing the household and raising children. Marriage was an important social institution, and it was common for Egyptians to marry at a young age. Children were highly valued, and the education of young boys, particularly those destined for high-ranking positions, was taken seriously. Despite the rigid social structure, there was some fluidity in Egyptian society. Skilled workers and craftsmen could rise in status through their work, and a talented scribe or artisan might gain favor with the pharaoh or priests, earning them a higher rank and greater privileges. However, the vast majority of Egyptians lived simple lives, working hard to sustain the kingdom and ensuring that Egypt's monumental projects continued to be realized. The religion of ancient Egypt was deeply intertwined with every aspect of daily life. It influenced the way the Egyptians saw the world, how they interacted with one another, and even how they constructed their cities and monuments. The gods were believed to have a direct impact on the world, and every aspect of Egyptian life was shaped by religious beliefs. Temples were built in honor of the gods, and rituals were performed regularly to appease them. The gods were depicted as both human and animal forms, with each deity representing a different aspect of life, such as the sun, the underworld, or fertility. The social structure, wealth, and culture of ancient Egypt all served to reinforce the pharaoh's divine authority and the stability of the state. The Great Pyramid was the physical manifestation of this power, a structure that represented not just the pharaoh's immortality, but also the strength of Egypt itself. It was a symbol of divine order, and the people of Egypt were united in their devotion to the gods and the pharaoh. The pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a powerful reminder of the civilization's greatness and the eternal connection between the living and the divine. As the Great Pyramid of Giza stood as a testament to the height of Egyptian power, cracks began to appear within the very structure of society. The reign of Pharaoh Khufu, and indeed the entire Old Kingdom, was marked by a gradual shift from unity to division, from prosperity to decline. Despite the grandeur of the pyramid and the wealth of the state, Egypt's social and political stability began to erode as internal struggles grew more apparent. The pharaohs of Egypt were believed to be divinely ordained, and their word was law. However, as the centuries passed, the centralization of power in the hands of the pharaohs began to create tensions. While the pharaohs maintained control over the wealth of the nation, much of that wealth was concentrated in the hands of the elite and the priesthood. The rich were able to live in luxury, while the majority of the population, particularly the farmers and laborers, struggled to make a living. These disparities created a growing sense of resentment among the common people who felt disconnected from the divine kings they were supposed to revere. The growing power of the priesthood, too, began to undermine the authority of the pharaohs. The priests held immense influence over the people, controlling access to the gods and managing the wealth of the temples. The religious elite became increasingly independent from the state, and their growing power often conflicted with the goals of the pharaohs. As the priests became more influential, they began to act as rival power centers, challenging the authority of the pharaohs in subtle but significant ways. Along with these internal divisions came signs of economic instability. The great building projects that had once been symbols of Egypt's might began to drain the resources of the state. The labor force, once a well-organized and highly motivated group, became increasingly strained. The massive undertaking required for the construction of the Great Pyramid was an enormous financial burden, and as Egypt continued to build grand monuments, the cost of maintaining such projects began to outweigh the returns. The wealth that had flowed into Egypt from trade and agriculture started to dwindle, and the once vibrant economy began to falter. The monumental structures that defined Egypt's glory became both a symbol of its achievements and a reflection of its growing problems. The same grandiose monuments that showcased Egypt's power also exposed its vulnerabilities. The constant need for laborers, resources, and land to build new tombs and temples stretched the empire thin, and the strain on Egypt's resources became increasingly evident. The Great Pyramids were built in an era of relative peace, but as Egypt's internal issues grew more pronounced, its ability to maintain that peace became more difficult. As Egypt's internal divisions deepened, signs of rebellion began to appear. Local rulers, once loyal to the pharaohs, began to assert their independence, weakening the unity of the kingdom. These rival leaders sought to carve out their own power bases, undermining the centralized authority of the pharaoh. The tensions between the elite and the common people also led to occasional uprisings and unrest. While the pharaohs had once been able to maintain order through their divine authority, they now found it increasingly difficult to control their empire. The once stable economy began to show signs of stress as well. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, had always provided a reliable source of water for irrigation, but shifts in the river's flooding patterns began to affect agriculture. Crop failures became more frequent, and famine started to take hold in certain regions. The pharaohs, who had once been seen as the guarantors of abundance and prosperity, were now facing growing dissatisfaction from the people they ruled. These cracks in the foundation of Egyptian society were not immediately catastrophic, but they laid the groundwork for a long period of instability. The pharaohs, once seen as divine beings above reproach, were no longer able to command the same level of respect. The concentration of wealth in the hands of the elite, the growing influence of the priests, and the economic challenges all contributed to the eventual downfall of the Old Kingdom. The collapse of this once unified empire set the stage for the tumultuous period that would follow, known as the First Intermediate Period, when Egypt would face political fragmentation, social upheaval, and internal strife. The decline of Egypt was not a sudden collapse but rather a slow unraveling. As the mighty pyramid stood in the desert, its creators and the civilization that built it struggled with the very forces they had once controlled. The internal divisions that had begun to appear during the reign of Khufu would continue to haunt Egypt, leading to the eventual weakening of its once unshakable power. The Great Pyramid, while enduring, would become a reminder not just of Egypt's achievements but of its fragility, a symbol of the fleeting nature of even the most powerful empires. As Egypt faced internal unrest and weakening power, external challenges began to rise, further destabilizing the once mighty civilization. The surrounding regions, once under Egypt's influence or control, started to grow in power and ambition. These new threats came in the form of rival empires, invasions, and economic pressures from neighboring lands. The empire that had once been the unrivaled force of the ancient world now found itself vulnerable to the forces outside its borders. One of the most immediate threats came from the neighboring regions to the northeast, particularly the Levant and the ancient Near East. The people of these regions, including the Hyksos, a Semitic-speaking people from the Levant, began to encroach upon Egypt's territory. They took advantage of the weakening state of Egypt and launched incursions into the Nile Delta. The Hyksos, skilled in warfare and chariotry, exploited Egypt's internal strife and fragmented political structure, which made it difficult for the pharaohs to mount a unified defense. Over time, the Hyksos would establish themselves as rulers in the Delta, marking the beginning of the Second Intermediate Period, a time when Egypt was split and divided, struggling to maintain its dominance over its territory. The Hyksos were not the only threat Egypt faced. Other neighboring powers, including the Nubians to the south and the Libyans to the west, also took advantage of Egypt's internal decline. These incursions placed pressure on Egypt's military resources, which had already been stretched thin by the demands of monumental construction projects like the pyramids and the growing bureaucracy. The pharaohs, who once commanded vast armies to protect Egypt's borders, now found themselves unable to hold back these invading forces. The military, once a symbol of Egypt's power, began to falter under the strain of defending the kingdom on multiple fronts. In addition to military threats, Egypt also faced environmental challenges that further undermined its stability. The once reliable flooding of the Nile, which had sustained Egyptian agriculture for millennia, became erratic. Periods of drought and poor flooding reduced the amount of fertile soil left behind after the river's annual inundation. This led to crop failures, food shortages, and rising famine. The agricultural heart of Egypt began to wither, and the population that had once been well-fed now faced hunger. The suffering of the common people only fueled resentment against the ruling class, and the gap between the elite and the laborers grew even wider. In the face of these mounting pressures, the Egyptian rulers began to lose their grip on the kingdom. The once absolute authority of the pharaoh began to erode, as provincial leaders grew more powerful and independent. The pharaohs, who had once been seen as the divine rulers of Egypt, now struggled to maintain control over the lands they ruled. The growing power of local officials and military leaders undermined the unity of Egypt, further fracturing the kingdom. It became clear that the centralized state that had once made Egypt so powerful was no longer functioning as it had in the past. The invasion of the Hyksos was a turning point in Egypt's history, marking the first time in thousands of years that foreign invaders had successfully entered and ruled over Egypt. The loss of control over the northern part of the kingdom left a deep scar on Egypt's sense of identity. For the first time, the Egyptians were forced to acknowledge their vulnerability to outside powers. The rise of the Hyksos also shifted the balance of power in the ancient world. It was no longer Egypt alone that dominated the Nile Valley and surrounding regions. The Hyksos brought with them new technologies, including the chariot, which changed the dynamics of warfare in the region and posed a significant challenge to Egypt's traditional military superiority. The instability caused by these external threats only compounded the challenges Egypt was facing internally. With weakened defenses and a crumbling economy, Egypt was no longer the unified and powerful empire it had once been. The inability to defend against invaders and maintain order within its borders marked the beginning of Egypt's slow decline, and the rise of foreign rule in parts of the kingdom would have a lasting impact on Egypt's political landscape. The challenges that Egypt faced from external forces during this period were not merely military. They also had cultural and psychological effects. For the first time in centuries, the Egyptians were faced with the reality that they were not invincible. The myth of Egypt as an eternal, unchanging civilization was shattered, and the Egyptians would have to come to terms with their vulnerability. The foreign rule of the Hyksos was a humbling experience, one that forced the Egyptians to rethink their place in the world and their relationship with the powers surrounding them. Despite the pressures and the invasions, Egypt would eventually regain its power. The rise of the new kingdom marked the beginning of a new era, one where Egypt would reclaim its position as a dominant force in the ancient world. But the memory of these foreign invasions and the internal strife that preceded them would continue to shape Egypt's history. The challenges faced during this turbulent period would ultimately lead to a re-evaluation of the way Egypt governed and interacted with its neighbors. The external forces that had once threatened Egypt would eventually be incorporated into the kingdom's narrative, shaping the civilization for generations to come. The turning point in Egypt's history came when the once unchallenged power of the pharaohs began to falter. This period of decline, marked by internal discord and external invasions, culminated in events that would forever alter the course of Egypt's destiny. It was not a single catastrophic event that brought down the Old Kingdom, but a series of critical failures, compounded by betrayals and unforeseen challenges, that gradually set the stage for irreversible decline. The weakening of the pharaoh's central authority was one of the key factors in this downfall. The very institution that had once unified Egypt, the divine kingship of the pharaoh, was now under siege. As local rulers gained more power and began to act independently, the unity of the kingdom started to crumble. The pharaohs could no longer command the same loyalty and obedience from their subjects, and the vast empire that had once thrived under a single ruler fractured into competing power centers. This decentralization of power made it difficult for Egypt to defend itself against external invaders, who found it easier to exploit the cracks within the kingdom. At the same time, the growing influence of the priesthood further eroded the pharaoh's authority. The priests, who had always held significant power, became even more entrenched in Egyptian society. They controlled the religious life of the nation, and their wealth and influence grew to such an extent that they could challenge the pharaoh's decisions. In some cases, the pharaohs were forced to align themselves with the priests, ceding more power to the religious elite in exchange for their support. This political dynamic undermined the authority of the monarchy and made it harder for the pharaoh to maintain control over the vast resources of the kingdom. The military, once the pillar of Egypt's power, also began to show signs of weakness. As Egypt's borders became more porous and rival empires gained strength, the Egyptian military found itself stretched thin. The need to defend against incursions from the Hyksos in the north, the Libyans in the west, and the Nubians in the south drained Egypt's resources and manpower. The military, once feared throughout the ancient world, was now forced to contend with foreign invaders, many of whom possessed superior technologies, such as the chariot, which the Egyptians had not fully mastered. The pharaohs, unable to maintain their military dominance, began to lose ground to these external forces. The economic strain that came with these external and internal challenges further weakened Egypt. The lavish building projects that had once been a hallmark of Egyptian power, including the construction of the Great Pyramid, were no longer sustainable. The costs of maintaining the pyramids, temples, and tombs became increasingly burdensome, and the state's coffers began to dwindle. The once thriving trade networks that had connected Egypt to the rest of the ancient world also began to wither, as Egypt's military power waned and its economic influence diminished. Without the influx of wealth from trade and conquest, Egypt's economy became less resilient, and the state struggled to maintain its vast infrastructure. But perhaps the most defining event of this turning point was the betrayal of the once sacred relationship between the pharaoh and his people. The pharaoh, who had once been seen as a living god, was no longer viewed as invincible. The common people, who had always been expected to work tirelessly for the pharaoh's vision, began to question the divine mandate that had once held the nation together. The labor force, which had been instrumental in constructing the pyramids and other monumental projects, began to resist the demands placed upon them. The construction of the Great Pyramid itself, which had once united the people in a common cause, became a symbol of the growing rift between the rulers and the ruled. The breaking of this divine connection between the pharaoh and his people was, in many ways, the death knell of the old kingdom. Without the shared belief in the pharaoh's divine right to rule, the very foundation of Egyptian society began to crack. The sacred order that had held Egypt together for centuries could no longer be maintained, and the kingdom began to disintegrate. As Egypt descended into political fragmentation and social unrest, the pharaohs became more desperate to maintain their grip on power. They resorted to drastic measures, including increased taxation and forced labor, to fund their military campaigns and maintain their grand building projects. These actions only deepened the divisions within the kingdom, as the people became more resentful of the pharaoh's demands. The once proud civilization, which had built the Great Pyramid as a symbol of its eternal strength, now faced an uncertain future. The collapse of the Old Kingdom did not happen overnight, but rather over the course of several decades. It was a slow, painful unraveling of a once great civilization, one that had been built on the foundation of divine kingship, military power, and economic prosperity. But as the internal strife, external pressures, and betrayals took their toll, Egypt could no longer hold itself together. The pharaohs, once the most powerful rulers in the ancient world, had lost their divine connection to the people, and the kingdom began to fall apart. In the wake of the decline of the Old Kingdom, Egypt entered a period of political fragmentation and instability, known as the First Intermediate Period. The country was divided, and for the first time in its long history, Egypt was ruled by competing factions and regional leaders. The once unified kingdom had fractured, and the great achievements of the past seemed like distant memories. The Great Pyramid, though still standing tall, was a reminder of a time when Egypt had been at the height of its power, a symbol of the strength that had once been. The fall of the Old Kingdom was a momentous event in Egypt's history, marking the end of an era of monumental achievements and centralized power. The collapse of the centralized rule and the rise of competing factions set the stage for a period of profound uncertainty and fragmentation. As Egypt entered the First Intermediate Period, the grandeur of the past seemed increasingly distant, and the once unified kingdom splintered into smaller, independent regions. The political turmoil was compounded by social unrest, as the very structure of Egyptian society, built on the divine kingship of the pharaoh, began to erode. The immediate aftermath of the collapse was marked by widespread instability. The loss of centralized power left Egypt vulnerable to internal strife and external invasions. Regional rulers, or nomarchs, who had once been subservient to the pharaoh, now claimed power for themselves, leading to a divided Egypt where different factions vied for control. This fragmentation not only weakened Egypt's ability to defend its borders but also made it difficult to maintain the monumental construction projects that had once been a hallmark of Egyptian civilization. The great temples and pyramids that had been built during the Old Kingdom were left unfinished, and Egypt's architectural and artistic achievements began to stagnate. The social fabric of Egypt also began to unravel. The vast labor force that had once worked tirelessly on the construction of the pyramids and other monumental structures was now left without a clear purpose. The workers, who had once been motivated by the belief that their labor served a divine purpose, began to question their role in a kingdom that no longer seemed to have a clear direction. The breakdown of the centralized government and the loss of the pharaoh's divine authority created a sense of disillusionment among the people, and social divisions deepened. The once proud Egyptian state, which had been built on the unity of the pharaoh and his people, now found itself fractured and vulnerable to the forces of internal and external upheaval. Economically, the collapse of the Old Kingdom had a devastating impact. The once thriving economy, which had been fueled by trade, agriculture, and the wealth generated from monumental building projects, began to decline. The breakdown of central authority meant that the great infrastructure of Egypt, including its irrigation systems and agricultural networks, fell into disrepair. Without a unified government to manage the resources of the Nile, the agricultural system began to suffer. The annual flooding of the Nile, which had been essential to Egypt's prosperity, became less predictable, leading to crop failures and food shortages. The instability caused by these economic hardships further fueled social unrest and dissatisfaction among the population. The great monuments that had once stood as symbols of Egypt's power now became symbols of its decline. The Great Pyramid of Giza, though still an awe-inspiring structure, was a reminder of a time when Egypt had been at its height. As the country fell into disarray, the pyramid stood as a silent witness to the fall of the empire that had created it. It became a symbol of a lost era, a time when Egypt had been united under the rule of a divine pharaoh, and the kingdom had been a beacon of power and stability in the ancient world. However, the fall of the Old Kingdom did not mean the end of Egypt's greatness. Despite the fragmentation and turmoil of the First Intermediate Period, Egypt's legacy would not be so easily erased. The eventual reunification of the country under the Middle Kingdom brought about a revival of Egyptian culture, politics, and art. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs sought to restore Egypt's former glory, rebuilding the infrastructure and monuments that had been abandoned during the period of instability. The Great Pyramid, although it had fallen into disrepair, continued to stand as a symbol of Egypt's past greatness and its enduring resilience. As Egypt moved through the cycles of rise and fall, the Great Pyramid remained a constant reminder of the civilization's long and tumultuous history. Its massive stones, though weathered by the passage of time, still held within them the echoes of the civilization that had once created it. The pyramid was not only a tomb for a single pharaoh but also a symbol of the ambition, vision, and determination of an entire civilization. Though Egypt's political unity would never again reach the heights of the Old Kingdom, the Great Pyramid continued to stand as a testament to the enduring legacy of the pharaohs and the greatness of ancient Egypt. As Egypt moved into its new era, the mysteries surrounding the Great Pyramid of Giza continued to deepen. Over the centuries, the pyramid's purpose and construction have been the subject of endless speculation. While it remains one of the most remarkable achievements in human history, the questions surrounding its construction and its true purpose remain unanswered. Many of the pyramid's secrets have been lost to time, buried beneath the sands of Egypt, and what we know today is only a fragment of the full story. This sense of mystery is part of what has kept the Great Pyramid in the collective imagination of people for millennia. One of the most enduring mysteries of the Great Pyramid is how it was constructed. Ancient Egyptian engineering was undoubtedly advanced, but the sheer scale and precision of the pyramid's construction have baffled even modern engineers. The stones used to build the pyramid, some weighing several tons, had to be transported from quarries miles away and lifted to incredible heights. The exact methods used to accomplish this remain unclear. Some theories suggest ramps, either straight or zigzagging, were used to move the stones up the pyramid's sides, while others propose more complex systems involving levers, pulleys, and counterweights. Yet, despite countless attempts to replicate the construction techniques, no method has been conclusively proven to explain how the Egyptians were able to build such a perfect structure with the technology available at the time. Another mystery surrounds the purpose of the pyramid itself. While it is generally accepted that the Great Pyramid was intended as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, its precise function and significance have been debated. The pyramid's alignment with the stars, particularly those of Orion's belt, suggests that it had a cosmic significance, linking the pharaoh to the heavens. Some believe that the pyramid was more than just a tomb, it was a tool for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars and join the gods in the afterlife. Others have speculated that the pyramid's true purpose was connected to astronomical or even spiritual rituals, which have long since been forgotten. The pyramid's internal chambers and passageways also raise questions. The burial chamber, located deep within the pyramid, was intended to house the pharaoh's body and treasures, ensuring his passage to the afterlife. However, there are no inscriptions or elaborate decorations inside the pyramid, unlike other tombs that were filled with religious texts and offerings. This absence of decoration has led some scholars to suggest that the pyramid was never intended to be a tomb in the traditional sense, or that it was a symbolic structure meant to serve a different purpose entirely. The air shafts that extend from the king's chamber and align with certain stars only add to the intrigue, hinting at a more complex cosmological role than initially believed. Even more perplexing are the findings that suggest the pyramid was not only a monumental tomb but also a focal point for an entire spiritual system. Ancient texts and records mention that the pharaohs were not just buried in the pyramids, but also began their journey to the afterlife through rituals that involved the pyramid itself. These rituals were believed to align the pharaoh with the stars and the gods, ensuring his eternal reign in the afterlife. The connection between the pyramid and the stars, specifically the alignment with Orion, was thought to be part of a cosmic blueprint, reinforcing the idea that the pyramid was much more than a tomb, it was a portal to the divine. Despite the passing of centuries, many of the pyramid's secrets remain hidden. Archaeologists continue to explore the site, uncovering new details that add to our understanding of the pyramid's construction and purpose, but much is still shrouded in mystery. Recent technologies, such as advanced scanning and imaging techniques, have revealed previously unknown chambers within the pyramid, hinting at more secrets yet to be uncovered. Some believe that these hidden chambers may hold the key to understanding the true purpose of the pyramid and its creators. The enduring mystery of the Great Pyramid has not only captivated scholars and historians but has also sparked the imaginations of countless generations. Over the centuries, the pyramid has been the subject of numerous theories, some grounded in fact, others based on legend or speculation. From theories about extraterrestrial involvement in its construction to claims that the pyramid holds hidden knowledge about the future of mankind, the stories surrounding the pyramid continue to evolve. It is this sense of mystery that makes the Great Pyramid not just a monument to a bygone era, but a living symbol of humanity's eternal quest for knowledge and understanding. The legacy of the Great Pyramid stretches far beyond the borders of ancient Egypt. Its influence can be seen in cultures and civilizations around the world. The pyramid, as both an architectural marvel and a symbol of divine kingship, has inspired countless structures, from the step pyramids of Mesoamerica to the iconic pyramids in modern architecture. The concept of a monumental tomb that serves as a gateway to the afterlife has resonated with cultures throughout history, leaving an indelible mark on the human imagination. Even today, the Great Pyramid stands as a testament to the ingenuity and ambition of the ancient Egyptians. Its enduring mystery continues to captivate and inspire, a symbol of the heights that human civilization can achieve. Though much of its purpose and construction remains unknown, the pyramid's legacy is undeniable. It is a monument to the past, but also a window into the future, challenging us to explore and understand the mysteries of our own existence. As the night grows quiet and the whispers of ancient Egypt begin to fade, the Great Pyramid of Giza stands eternal, a symbol of human ambition, mystery, and resilience. The questions that have surrounded its creation, purpose, and meaning still remain unanswered, but the allure of the pyramid, much like the civilization that built it, will never fade. The ancient Egyptians, with their profound understanding of the cosmos, their ability to harness the forces of nature, and their devotion to the gods, created a monument that continues to challenge our understanding of history. The Great Pyramid is not merely a structure of stone, it is a testament to the ingenuity of humanity and the endless pursuit of knowledge. As we reflect on the pyramid's mysteries, we are reminded of the fragility of even the most powerful civilizations. Egypt, once the most powerful empire in the ancient world, eventually crumbled under the weight of internal strife and external pressures. Yet, even in its decline, the legacy of Egypt's grandeur remains, etched into the stone of the Great Pyramid. Its towering presence reminds us of the heights that civilizations can reach and the inevitable decline that follows. The fall of Egypt, marked by the fragmentation of the Old Kingdom and the eventual invasion of foreign forces, is a story that repeats itself throughout history. From the rise and fall of empires to the crumbling of once great nations, the lessons of Egypt's decline are timeless. The same forces that led to the decline of Egypt, corruption, inequality, and external invasion, are those that continue to threaten societies today. Yet, Egypt's ability to rise from the ashes during later periods, like the Middle Kingdom, speaks to the resilience of its people and the enduring power of its cultural legacy. As you listen to this tale of Egypt's past, let it serve as a reminder of the power of legacy. The Great Pyramid, still standing after thousands of years, is not just a physical structure but a beacon of human achievement. It challenges us to think about our own place in history, the legacies we will leave behind, and the questions that future generations will ask about us. What monuments will we leave for the future? What stories will be told of our time? Now, as the night settles in, take a moment to reflect on the lessons from the past. Let the story of Egypt, its rise, its glory, and its eventual decline, guide you into rest. The mysteries of the Great Pyramid will endure long after we are gone, as will the stories of those who came before us. Their triumphs and failures continue to shape the world we live in, and their legacy is woven into the fabric of history. May these thoughts bring you peace as you drift into a deep, restful sleep. What do you think about the mysteries of the Great Pyramid of Giza? Share your thoughts, ideas, and any theories you might have in the comments below. We love hearing your perspectives and theories on these ancient wonders. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sleepy Dungeons for more haunting journeys into lost civilizations. Until next time, may your night be calm and your dreams be filled with light, as the ancient wonders of the world continue to beckon us from the past. As the night grows quiet and the whispers of ancient Egypt begin to fade, the Great Pyramid of Giza stands eternal, a symbol of human ambition, mystery, and resilience. The questions that have surrounded its creation, purpose, and meaning still remain unanswered, but the allure of the pyramid, much like the civilization that built it, will never fade. The ancient Egyptians, with their profound understanding of the cosmos, their ability to harness the forces of nature, and their devotion to the gods, created a monument that continues to challenge our understanding of history. The Great Pyramid is not merely a structure of stone, it is a testament to the ingenuity of humanity and the endless pursuit of knowledge. As we reflect on the pyramid's mysteries, we are reminded of the fragility of even the most powerful civilizations. Egypt, once the most powerful empire in the ancient world, eventually crumbled under the weight of internal strife and external pressures. Yet, even in its decline, the legacy of Egypt's grandeur remains, etched into the stone of the Great Pyramid. Its towering presence reminds us of the heights that civilizations can reach and the inevitable decline that follows. The fall of Egypt, marked by the fragmentation of the Old Kingdom and the eventual invasion of foreign forces, is a story that repeats itself throughout history. From the rise and fall of empires to the crumbling of once great nations, the lessons of Egypt's decline are timeless. The same forces that led to the decline of Egypt, corruption, inequality, and external invasion, are those that continue to threaten societies today. Yet, Egypt's ability to rise from the ashes during later periods, like the Middle Kingdom, speaks to the resilience of its people and the enduring power of its cultural legacy. As you listen to this tale of Egypt's past, let it serve as a reminder of the power of legacy. The Great Pyramid, still standing after thousands of years, is not just a physical structure but a beacon of human achievement. It challenges us to think about our own place in history, the legacies we will leave behind, and the questions that future generations will ask about us. What monuments will we leave for the future? What stories will be told of our time? Now, as the night settles in, take a moment to reflect on the lessons from the past. Let the story of Egypt, its rise, its glory, and its eventual decline, guide you into rest. The mysteries of the Great Pyramid will endure long after we are gone, as will the stories of those who came before us. Their triumphs and failures continue to shape the world we live in, and their legacy is woven into the fabric of history. May these thoughts bring you peace as you drift into a deep, restful sleep. What do you think about the mysteries of the Great Pyramid of Giza? Share your thoughts, ideas, and any theories you might have in the comments below. We love hearing your perspectives and theories on these ancient wonders. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sleepy Dungeons for more haunting journeys into lost civilizations. Until next time, may your night be calm and your dreams be filled with light, as the ancient wonders of the world continue to beckon us from the past.